what is God trying to give you? What is he trying to give you in this season? What are you holding on to that he is trying to say, daughter, let go. I have something better in store for you. Welcome to the Best Believe Podcast. I'm your host, Michaela. I know what it feels like to have my head submerged underwater, not knowing how I'll get back up again. It wasn't until I reached my hand out to Christ and started implementing his word that I was able to move toward the journey of my dreams without the pain or overwhelm. This podcast is dedicated to helping you walk in your purpose, showing you that you aren't alone in your struggles, and that you can get unstuck and become the person God destined you to be in your faith, business, health, and life. You can expect mindset strategies, tips, and purpose-driven action to help you turn your crisis into opportunity. I'm here to show you there is purpose in your pain, and when you fall, I'll remind you that you are a warrior and you will get back up no matter what season you're in. You aren't alone. Best believe we are going to get through this together. Welcome to the Best Believe Podcast. I am your host, Michaela. This is my first time making a video for the podcast, looking at the camera. So if you're tuning in on YouTube, I'm so blessed that you're here. And if you didn't notice, I am in a new space. I was able to move into a new apartment, and that's all by the goodness of God. He is just so good to me. And I just wanted to share in this episode exactly how my yes has brought me to this exact moment. Through the obedience, through the faith, the sacrifices, all of the tough times that have occurred. I just want to go through that entire process, an entire story with you. And it all started in a terrible season in my life where I went through domestic violence. And I want to go through step by step some very important things that happened along the way that allowed me to live in this fulfillment, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So I just want to share that this is the last episode of season 2, which means that I am leaving no crumbs. I'm about to give you all that I have today. And I'm praying that it really helps you have a great perspective to maybe whatever it is that you're going through, whether it is a tough season, whether it's a season where you're trying to follow through with what God told you to do. Maybe you're scared and you just haven't given your yes. This episode is going to inspire you to do exactly that. So while we're on this break, I'm going to be filming season 3. I want to definitely try to be more consistent with this podcast as I have been the past month and a half, but I really want to be a good steward over what God has provided me. And in this time frame, I'll also be working on the book launch of the Best Believe Journal through my company Made by the Word. And I just have a praise report. I was looking at a journal where I wrote maybe 2 years ago a logo for Made by the Word. And I had no idea what God was telling me to do with this, but I just started drawing, and then here you go. This is a logo that I just recently had made, and I didn't even realize that I had drew that years ago. So when I was going through my desk trying to find maybe some inspiration for this podcast episode, I was reminded, and it showed me just how much Jesus is there, just how much he is good to us, because he will literally give us bits and pieces of the vision and we will have no idea what it's for. But the purpose isn't to know the why or the how. The purpose is to just do it and allow him to refine you and grow you through the process so that one day it's going to all make sense. And the verse we are standing on for this episode is Hebrews 11:8-9. And I do have a bit and piece of my Bible that fell out, so don't judge me. I'm going to get a new one eventually. But this Bible it just means so much to me because it was my first Bible ever. And it's the Bible that when I went through domestic violence, I randomly found it and it just really changed my life. So anyways, Hebrews 11:8-9. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going, and when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith. For he was like a foreigner living in tents, and so did Isaac and Jacob, who inherited the same promise. This just shows that there are so many of us that God is calling to do something, and we have to move by faith. It was by faith Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land. The first time I ever read that, I felt so amazed, because that is exactly what God did to me. When I lived in Houston and he told me to move to Boston, when I lived in Boston and I went back to Dallas and I went to Seattle, and God was like, no, you need to go back to Dallas. That was by faith that I obeyed, because I was at such a terrible point in my life that I didn't know what else to do. And so I want to start from the very beginning, from when I was in Houston, so that I can show you what I had to go through in order to live what I'm living right now. And that doesn't mean I don't go through trials now, because I do 100%. And although I still get attacked, the difference is that I know how to respond. I just want to take it all the way back to when I lived in Houston and I had just went through domestic violence. I just want to talk about how God will show up in the smallest ways. This was before I ever had a relationship with him. And this is when I knew what a cross was. Like, I would see them and I would wear them, but it didn't have any type of meaning to me. That's just an example. So right after I went through being suffocated and being hit in the face, ended up with a black eye, I didn't know what to do. So what I knew to do was to run to my family. And I ended up driving 4 hours from Houston to Dallas, told them what was happening, and they were like, you need to go and pack up all your things out of that house. And so after that, I drove the next morning all the way to Houston. So that's another 4 hours. I got a U-Haul, started packing up all of my stuff, and that was a whole nother situation that occurred. That is a story for another day. But after I packed up my stuff, I drove back from Houston to Dallas. And it was in this time that I was driving that I was bawling my eyes out. I looked like I was on the run because my eye was black. I had these huge glasses on, and I was just terrified of anybody seeing me. So I wore a face mask, and so you could like not see my face. I'm going to pop a picture so that you can see clearly. Like, I was terrified, and I looked pretty scary, and I looked like someone who was trying to hide from someone, which I was. And it was in this time frame that I was driving this U-Haul. I had my phone Bluetooth connected to the actual truck. I'm listening to my own music. I'm sure it was like some NBA YoungBoy or something, because that's what I listened to at the time. And all of a sudden, the like radio turned on. Like, I didn't touch anything for the radio turned on. And it was someone speaking a message from God. Like, I kid you not. Someone was saying like something, I can't remember exactly what was said. I had sent it in a voice message, so I don't have the actual, like, I didn't write stuff down back then. But he said something to me through this lady on the actual radio that like stopped me in my tracks. Like, how did this even happen? How did the radio come on and they're talking about God and how God is going to be there for you in your situation, and he loves you and he's listening and the Lord is there with you? Like, something like that was being said, and then all of a sudden it turned off and my music came back on, and I'm like, what is happening? So when I look back at that, I just know that that was God speaking to me, like, come home to me, come home. And there's another story that I will say that God like showed himself to me in this time frame when it was a really hard season. So I ended up going back to Houston to file a police report because I felt like I didn't want him to do this to somebody else. And I really felt like I needed to stand up for other women who have gone through domestic violence. So that was the decision that was made at that point in time. And I ended up staying at a hotel, and one of my friends went with me. And so that night we're like, let's just go walk around. Like, let's just go walk around the city and have fun, I guess, as much fun as we could. And I ended up walking outside, and I walked past this like thing with a plant, and there's a card inside. And I'm like, what is this? So I see it, and it is a like note that is talking about Jesus. Like, I still have the picture, and it's like a story about who Jesus is and how he can show up for you in your life. And like, I just want to pause and say that my video camera keeps shutting off. First it overheated, then the memory card randomly said that there was no space when I know that there is. So I just rebuked the enemy and I prayed, because this word must be that important for the enemy to be that mad. So we're going to keep going and keep moving in love and grace. And I'm going to try to not speed it up, but try to move a little quicker just in case something else happens to come up, which it is likely to. So I'm prepared and I'm on offense. So just as we talked in our previous episodes, we must stay on offense, not allow it to phase us, and to keep moving, because James 4:7 says, resist the devil and he will flee. And I am not scared of him. Anyways, so I found that card in that plant and it caught me off guard, because it was like, what is happening right now? I didn't have that relationship with him to even understand that he is so good and so sweet and so gentle, and isn't going to abruptly just come into your life and change everything. Like, he gave us free will. So he's just going to hint at it sometimes. And when I look back, it just makes me so happy that despite me walking away from him, despite me making so many mistakes, he was still there and he still showed me he was there. And so I encourage you to think back at maybe a rough time in your life where you felt like he was not there for you. I want you to think super hard and pray and ask God to show you how he was there. And then you're going to be so surprised, and it's going to really allow for some inner healing to happen, because you're going to be like, wow, Father, you really were there for me this entire time, and I was blind to it. Blind. So fast forward, I ended up moving to Boston. I drove however many hours, maybe it was close to 30, I'm not really sure, but drove to Boston. I moved there in a span of like 3 weeks after what happened to my eye, and I moved there alone. My mom was really scared for me to go by myself, because she thought I was going to take my life, because I had previously tried to do that, but the Holy Spirit called me in that moment. The Lord spoke my name in that moment and was like, absolutely not. You are not about to die. You are not about to die. And so when I lived in Boston, I was really crying out to the Lord, like, Lord, why did you save me? Why did you save me if you're going to allow me to go through so much pain right now? Why did you save me if I have this burden? Like, what am I going to do with myself? Like, I don't have a will to live. I don't want to be here. And like, I don't even understand the purpose of you saving me. Like, I was that down bad. And for you to see me where I am now, it just shows you how much God can do in your life when you give him a chance. When you just give him your yes. When you just say, okay, I'm going to at least try. Because at that point, I tried everything but the Lord. Everything. I woke up, I had the night terrors that I've talked to you about before. I couldn't get out of bed. There were days that I didn't eat, and I used to pass out all the time. I would have seizures. I would say over a span of like 8 years, I passed out maybe 12 times. I passed out in front of people. I passed out at restaurants. Like, the enemy, he was attacking me like no other. And I'm so blessed, because now I don't have seizures. I haven't passed out since. Like, that is a testimony in itself. So while I was in Boston, the Lord was really working on me like hard to be like, look, just trust me. I'm going to change your life. And I had a conversation with a friend at that time where she was like, just give it 6 months. And so I said, okay, I'm going to give the Lord 6 months to change something. And if nothing has changed, then I am going to take my life. Like, I'm not going to be here. Every single day, the Lord showed me his presence. I felt his comfort every single day. Like, that's all that I had. Everything was meaningless to me. And at that time, I had earned $60,000 in 3 months, and I spent every cent of it because it didn't mean anything to me. And I thought that things would bring me joy. And I didn't have that understanding that I do now, that things don't bring me joy. My worth is not in the things of the world, but my worth is in who God says that I am. It is his promises that define my identity. I am made in the image of Christ. So at that time, I was having that realization. And from then, my contract ended, so I had to leave. I ended up leaving, driving back to Dallas. I was there for maybe a week, to where one of my friends at the time told me, hey, I have a room available. I was just broke up with my dude, and I want you to come here because I know that you're struggling, and maybe we can just heal and work on stuff together. So I was like, sure, I'll come stay there. It was a free place to stay. I was being offered and allowed to be there, and I didn't have to work. And that summer really changed my perspective. Like, that's when I really felt different. And I'm going to explain. So I drove from Dallas to Seattle. When I moved there, again, I was really broken. And that's when the enemy started attacking me even more. I still didn't know how to respond. So it would cripple me for days, cripple me for weeks. And I had a friend at the time that I would like dump all my problems on. And there was at a point in time where I couldn't talk to this friend anymore. And so I was like, who am I supposed to talk to? Who am I supposed to tell all my problems to? Who am I supposed to vent to? It was in that moment that I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to talk to you, God. And when I look back, that was a really big moment in my journey when I said, okay, I don't have anyone else to talk to. God will remove people out your life so that you can find him. I spoke to him when that happened. And it was through that I started to really feel the comfort of the Lord. That's when I started to spend more time in nature. I started to really appreciate all of his creation. That's when I started to have a lot of mental issues, I would say, like my brain fog started to occur. I couldn't stay present in the moment. And so I would do things to help me stay present in the moment by like looking at the trees, paying attention to the movement, like looking at the animals, paying attention to the smell, like what is going on right now with what I have. And that allowed me to actually enjoy life. That's when I started to actually enjoy life. But it was in that moment that I started to try to fill my voids with something else other than money and food. I started to fill those voids with weed. I started to fill those voids with men. And that only left me more damaged. And I have a video that I'm going to play for you in this next clip that I was crying and I was saying how, God, like I want to do this, but I just feel like I can't, like, and I don't know how. And so I'm just going to play the video clip for you.
I just feel so frustrated because I'm not able to do the things I used to do, which is just be very driven and working on all the things that I love. But I'm really struggling with doing the things that I love. And it's like, I want to do it, but it's like, I don't know how to do it. And I know all I have to do is start, but sometimes just even the walk to the table is like hard. But today, I decided to take a 30-day break from smoking to see if my mental can progress. I don't know. Whenever I'm smoking and I'm on my shit, it doesn't affect anything, but I feel like because I'm smoking while I'm depressed, while nothing else is going right, it's like it's being used as like a downer. I don't even know. But I noticed like today that me smoking has been helping me eat the past few weeks. I used it as an incentive to keep myself working. And I feel like that's where I fucked up, because it's supposed to be about passion and not about just getting myself to do it. And I feel like I was using the weed at the time to get myself to work, just to get myself back in routine from before my eye situation. So I'm happy that the weed got me through that, but I'm just at a point where I'm trying to do better now. And It frustrates me knowing that I'm gonna be without weed for 30 days. It's very hard to even imagine. I smoke a lot every single day. I probably go through at least a seventh of weed every day or two. I can't keep living like this. If I'm gonna be on tour doing music, I have to change something. And I just don't know what to do. So, just gonna try it and see what happens and hope for the best.
So as you can see, I was broken. I didn't know what to do. And I have another video that I really want to share, but I don't know if the Lord's leading me to share this one in particular because of the fact that I'm like actively smoking a blunt and talking at the same time. Maybe one day in the future, but it just shows like I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And that's what led me to surrendering. That's what led me to be like, okay, God, whatever it is that you want me to do, I'll do it. Anything. I'll try anything to get out of this pain because I don't even understand how I'm ever going to work again. I'm terrified. And so when I surrendered, he said, go to Dallas. I was like, what? I don't want to do that. Can you give me something else to do? And it took me a while to actually agree to go to Dallas because I was filled with so much fear. The enemy planted so much fear. All the voices in my head saying like, people are going to think you're a failure. Like, oh, you did fail because you're going back home. Your dream was to move away and do all of this stuff. And now you're going to be home while all your friends are famous and living in LA and living in all these other states. And all of that was playing in my mind. And I already felt like an outcast because right after I went on a trip with them and everyone was filled with so much joy. And they gave me like a bunch of love, of course, but I just felt like not like anyone else, which, oh my gosh, randomly, I just remembered when I went on that trip, I remember being in the hot tub, just crying my eyes out. And I look up and there were stars in the sky shaped like a smiley face. And when I looked up and I saw that, I started bawling my eyes out even more. Like that's just another like reminder of God just showing himself randomly in our stories. Anyway, back to what I was talking about, what was I talking about? Oh, I remember what I was saying. So it was through all this. And then I thought about, okay, well, what if I actually succeed? I started to fear success. All of this fear started to debilitate me. I honestly just said that word and I don't even remember the meanings. If I use that in the wrong context, forgive me. But it like, you know, I can't think of the word. I think that's the right word that I was meaning to say, but I can't think of the exact definition. Besides the point, I just was crippled in that moment and I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do that, Father. And even though I ignored, the voice just came louder and louder and louder. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. I packed up all my stuff, packed it in my car, packed up my 100-pound dog, and I said, okay, God, whatever you want. I had $100 on my account. I did not have a place to stay. I couldn't stay at my mom's because our dogs don't get along. So that wasn't an option. And I didn't have any money. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to trust you. Whatever it is, I'm just going to believe that if I follow, that you're going to provide. And I didn't have like a point of reference of like really understanding who God was or really understanding like he's done that for me in the past. So it was really a step out on faith, just like Abraham when he said it was by faith that Abraham called him, that it was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home. So that's exactly what I did, and I didn't understand that's what I was doing at that time. From the point of me leaving Seattle to getting to Dallas, was 30 hours. And it was in that time frame that by the time I got to Dallas, I had a place to stay and I didn't have to pay first month's rent. It's just such a blessing just to see how much God is going to provide if you just say yes. So this is why I'm sharing this. I've never shared this story before with this much depth and value because I don't know, I just never did. But I'm sharing it now because I want you to see that being obedient is going to allow God to do so many things in our life. And it was through that original yes of like, okay, Father, fine. And one of the worst moments of my life that led me to where I am now in being fulfilled and knowing how to respond to the tough times. When I actually lived in Dallas, things started to shift in my life. And I still lived in, an old mindset. Like I said, I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was 1 foot in the world, 1 foot with the Lord. When I first moved to Dallas, I actually still would go out here and there with my friends. But when I went out, I didn't feel like I should have been there at all. I knew I shouldn't have been there, but I just kept going because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have any other friends at the time that really knew the Lord. And God was trying to remove me from everything that I knew. He wanted me to walk with him only. And there are points and times in our journeys where God will isolate us from what we knew to connect with him on a deeper level. That doesn't mean he isolates us from absolutely everybody. He will still provide people in our corner to support us and walk with us along the way. But he will isolate us to try to push us through that spiritual circumcision where we're letting go of things that are not serving us, that are not in alignment with the word of God, that are not in alignment with the will he has for our life. The last time that I actually went out was on my birthday, I think in 2023, which my birthday is February 6th. That was the last time I ever went out to the club. I went out, I was there, and every single song I felt conviction for listening to, and every song that came on, I changed the words. So I would listen to the beat and then I would just be singing like songs to Jesus, making up names and stuff. And I'm not suggesting like, okay, yeah, go out and do this. I'm not saying any of this. I'm not condoning any of this behavior. This is just what happened before I was baptized. And so I had the call and I just didn't listen. And it wasn't until I fully gave my life to Christ when things started to shift in my life. And this is when I truly started to build that relationship with him. So I built that relationship through prayer. I built that relationship by actually reading the Bible every day. And that doesn't mean you have to read the Bible to have a relationship with him. That's not what I'm saying. But that's what really will enhance your relationship. That's really what will enhance your mindset to help you have what you need every single day to withstand the attacks of the enemy. And I ended up living in that apartment for 1 year and 10 months. And that 1 year and 10 months ended, I would say, like, when did that end? Oh, it ends tomorrow. And I ended up getting this apartment by faith. And I moved in 2 weeks early before my lease ended at the other place. But my point is that when I bought this apartment wasn't even built. The Lord led me to this apartment and I ended up purchasing the unit before it was even available, before I could ever set my eyes on it. And that was like, in the natural, what it looks like. Okay, how can I say this right, God? How do we say this? What I did in the natural showed what I originally did in the spirit when I first listened to God with my faith. So I bought this in faith, not knowing the end result, if I was going to end up liking it or if I wasn't going to like it. I just knew that God told me that this was where I was supposed to be. And so I purchased it. And then when I actually saw it, I was in love. Like, oh, like, God, this is exactly what I wanted. He knows what we want. He will give us our heart desires. But there are some things that we have to remove so that we can actually receive. Emmy Moore posted a clip from her episode where she was holding like a bunch of pillows and she was like, how can you receive something that God's trying to give you if you're holding on to all this? So she showed herself like removing one pillow at a time, which opened her arms and her hands to be able to receive what God is trying to give us. What is God trying to give you? What is he trying to give you in this season? What are you holding on to that he's trying to say, daughter, let go. I have something better in store for you. Is it your current friends? Is it the idea of you wanting something to be a certain way? Like, what is God trying to push you to let go of so that you can receive what you deserve, what he's trying to provide for you? I have some pointers that I wrote down from my story. As I was sharing this story, I just want to share that I did not write anything down of like word for word of what to say. I just know that, okay, I put Boston, Dallas, Seattle, and I wrote like maybe one thing. Okay, don't forget to say this, but like everything was the Lord, the Holy Spirit guiding me to share with you. And so these are the pointers that if I was thinking back on what I went through, that maybe this will stick with you and you can hold on to them, write them down, and do what you will with them. When the Lord tells you it's time to make a change, it's going to become louder and louder until you do it. It won't always make sense at first, but if you just give your trust, do what he told you to do, it will all make sense. The pain you're in will not last forever. Giving your life to Christ doesn't mean life gets easier. It means that you know who to rely on in the midst of the chaos. The attacks get stronger to try to get you to turn around. The devil doesn't attack anyone he already has. Think about that. God was always there. We just couldn't recognize it in that season. But if you look back, you'll notice just how much his presence was with you. Because his word says that he will not leave us nor forsake us. Have courage and be strong, for he is with us. The closer you get to Jesus, the more you see yourself. Just like the story of Peter stepping out of the boat and walking on the water towards Jesus. The closer he got, the more worried he became, and that's what he dropped. And Jesus reached out his hand and Peter grabbed it. So it's just proof that the closer we do get, the more we start to really see ourselves, the more we start to really see things for what it is. Through my yes, and through the obedience, and through the faith is what led me to where I am right now. You will lose people along the way. I have a short little story that just popped up in my mind. When I first moved here, there was someone that God led me to be cool with, but God used them to then get me to the next place. That relationship did not last long. The relationship actually ended where this person started to talk bad about me. This person started to treat me differently. Like this person started to be envious of me, jealous of me based off what God was doing in my life, based off of the relationships that I was starting to build. And so this is just to say that God will put people in your life for a season. They're not always meant to be there. So having the discernment to know and the relationship with God to know who is it that is supposed to stay? Who is it that's supposed to leave? And I have a whole episode that I'm going to do in season 3 about friendships, like making friends, how to discern friendships, all that good stuff. And now I'm really cautious about who I spend my time with because I want to make sure that the person that I'm spending my time with is supposed to be here and is in alignment with the will that God has for me. The initial act of faith led to other acts of faith. And I say this because the first time you ever give faith, you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then you later realize, wow, this actually worked out. So then when God tells you to do something else later, you're like, okay, I'm doing it. And then there are going to be times, of course, where you're like, I don't know. But in the end, you end up listening because you just know that if God said to do it, he's going to provide for you through it. So I really hope that I explained everything well and that, you were able to take something from this episode. This one was definitely long overdue. I meant to share this entire story a long time ago, but God's timing is everything. So he meant for me to share it at this exact moment for whoever is listening. I'm a living testimony of what obedience in what God told you to do brings. There's so much that we just don't know. His thoughts are greater than our thoughts. We don't know the whole story, but God does. He knew the beginning from the end. Or is it he knew the end from the beginning? Y'all know what I'm talking about. I don't know why my mind just went blank. My mind just went blank. He knew the end from the beginning. He knew the beginning from the end. He knew the end from the beginning. I'm pretty sure it's he knew the end from the beginning. Y'all, I'm still learning the word, so forgive me. Sister, I just pray that this episode was exactly what you needed at this exact point in time. I've received messages lately that God's been signaling you to move and you're just scared to do it. I'm here to tell you to just do it. Just do it. If he's calling you to move, move. Don't worry about the how. Don't worry about who you're leaving behind. God is always going to provide and supply and be there for us every single step of the way. If I never left, I wouldn't have created this podcast. If I would have never left, I would have never started Made by the Word. If I would have never left, a lot of the people and the relationships that have been a, support system for me to help grow me in this season, it would have never happened. There are a lot of testimonies that I have now that wouldn't have been here if I never gave my yes. There's a lot of people that would have never been inspired to initiate change in their life if I never gave my yes. There's a lot of people who would still be living in sadness and darkness if I never gave my yes. It's through my testimony that allows people to see what God can do for them. And so I just want to encourage you to give your yes, because you're capable of it. It's scary, I know. It's very scary. It takes a lot of vulnerability, I know. It takes a lot of sacrifice, I know. But God is just so good. I wouldn't have had it any other way. There's so many sacrifices that I've had to make to get to this point. There's a lot of people I had to let go. There's a lot of restructuring and construction that had to happen and refinement that had to happen to be where I am today. And I'm still working through it. I'm still healing. He's still working a good work within me. And it takes a lot for me to show up on here. It takes a lot for me to be vulnerable. It takes a lot. It takes courage. It takes boldness. These are things that I only have because of the Lord. These are things that I show up to do, to talk to you about because of the Lord. Sister, it's hard. It's hard. But you're capable. If I can do it, you can do it. You're not in this alone. Best believe we're in this together. So if this podcast impacted you in any way, please share it with your friends. Please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you're interested in grabbing the new Best Believe journal, go to madebytheword.com and you'll be able to get yours. Pre-orders will be available in October if you're listening in real time. And if you listen later, you can still go to madebytheword.com and grab yours. And that is MADEBYTHE word.com. I'm excited and I look forward to this journey together. And I also made a YouTube channel for my personal brand. And here I'll be doing vlogs, and you'll just be able to see more behind the scenes of me building this business, of my walk with the Lord, of my lifestyle, everything that I'm doing and working through in my day-to-day. And I would love to have you there. So I am so grateful that you were tuning into this entire episode. I know it was long and I might have been yapping and blabbling and whatever you want to call it, but I'm just grateful that you're here with me. So I am excited to see you in the next video, and I'll see you next season. Bye.